Listen for a moment, not with your ears, with that quiet place beneath the noise, the one you pretend isn't trembling, because there is a question waiting there, a question you've avoided for years, a question that follows you like a shadow in daylight. Why does someone else's happiness feel like a threat? You never say it out loud. You never let it form fully in your mind. You wrap it in jokes, in ambition, in polite smiles, but it lingers like dust floating in a beam of morning light. Why does another person's rise make you feel like you are sinking? Why does their joy feel like your failure? Why does their beauty feel like your erasure? Why does their success feel like your disappearance? You don't want to feel this. You hate that it exists in you, but it does. And it whispers in the dark. It whispers in the scroll of your thumb. It whispers in the silence after a friend's good news. It whispers when you look in the mirror and feel something tighten in your chest, something cold, something small, something you wish you could hide from yourself. Where did that voice come from? Who taught you to measure your life against the lives of others? Who convinced you that your worth was a number on a scale made of strangers? Who planted the idea that if someone else shines, your own light must dim? You never agreed to this contract. Yet you signed it every time you compared, every time you contrasted, every time you asked, am I enough compared to them? Pause here. Let the question settle. Envy is not a shout. It is a breath, a flicker, a tightening of the soul. It hides behind compliments, behind congratulations, behind the practiced calmness of I'm happy for you. But deep inside, a small voice trembles. Why not me? You try to outrun it. You try to replace it with gratitude, humility, discipline. But the truth is quieter than all of that. You are not angry at them. You are afraid of yourself, afraid that you are falling behind, afraid that you are invisible, afraid that life is a race and everyone else received a head start. You whisper, even if only silently, what if I never catch up? This is the question that terrifies you. Not because it is cruel, but because it feels true. You don't envy their joy. You envy what their joy reveals about your own wounds. And the wound is simple. You are not at peace with who you are. That is where the mirror turns dark. Not because it shows you others, but because it shows you yourself. Now breathe. Not to calm down, not to forgive. Simply to acknowledge that you have stepped into a truth few dare to touch. The enemy you fear most lives in the reflection you avoid. And tonight, you will not avoid it. Not in anger, not in guilt, but in quiet, trembling honesty. Your journey begins with this question, the one you finally dared to face. Why does someone else's life feel like a measurement of your own? The begin here, at the doorway of discomfort, where awareness flickers like a candle in a dark cathedral, where silence becomes your only companion. The question stands before you, unblinking, patient, waiting, and as you breathe into its presence, something inside you whispers, I am ready to see. There is a moment inside you, quiet but unmistakable, when comparison no longer feels like curiosity, but begins to feel like injury. It happens without announcement, without sound, like a shift in the wind before a storm. 1 minute you are observing the world. The next you are questioning yourself through the reflection of another life. Envy does not arrive as an enemy. It arrives as a whisper, soft, almost tender, almost compassionate. It doesn't tell you, look at them. It tells you, look at what you are not. And so the cycle begins not with malice, but with misunderstanding. You see someone's joy, someone's beauty, someone's success, someone's confidence, someone's effortless movement through the world. And something in you, something small, something fragile, contracts, just a little, barely noticeable, like the breath you hold without realizing. A tightening, a flicker, a quiet grief, too subtle to name. You tell yourself you are simply noticing, but noticing becomes comparing. Comparing becomes measuring. Measuring becomes diminishing, and diminishing becomes a slow, silent erosion of the self. This is the cycle, the unseen machinery beneath modern life. the psychological current that pulls you away from the shore of your own being. You think you are choosing your thoughts, but the cycle chooses them for you. At first, it feels harmless. A friend shares good news. A stranger posts a moment of triumph. Someone you know rises in ways you once hoped you would. You smile. You congratulate. You say all the right words. But beneath the kindness, a tremor moves. Why not me? When will it be my turn? Why do they move so effortlessly while I struggle in silence? These questions do not make you selfish. They make you human. But the cycle twists them. It warps them. It turns them into a verdict. Not against the world, against yourself. You begin to believe that someone else's rise confirms your fall, that their abundance confirms your scarcity, that their joy confirms your inadequacy. This is the first illusion of the cycle. You believe you are reacting to their life, but you are reacting to your fear. Fear of falling behind, fear of being unseen, fear of being the one who tries and tries but never touches the horizon, fear that you are running, but the ground beneath you is still. Comparison begins as a glance outward, but its wound grows inward. You start to measure your life in borrowed mirrors. Mirrors built by culture, curated by strangers, polished by social expectation. Mirrors that reflect not who you are, but who you are supposed to be. You look into these mirrors, and they do not show your face. They show your hunger, your longing, your fear of being the wrong version of yourself, and the cycle deepens. You no longer observe others. You interpret them. Their happiness becomes evidence of your failure. Their progress becomes evidence of your delay. Their radiance becomes evidence of your dimness. It is not true, but truth rarely matters when the wound is open. Envy is not about wanting what someone has. It is about fearing what it reveals about you. You think you envy their success, but what you really envy is the imagined absence of struggle in their life. You think you envy their confidence, but what you really envy is the belief that confidence would silence the voice inside you, the voice that whispers that you are not enough. You think you envy their light, but what you really envy is the feeling of being whole. Envy is longing wearing the mask of resentment, a longing not for what they possess, but for who you believe you might become. If only the ache within you would dissolve. You notice something else as the cycle tightens. Your world becomes smaller, not physically. Emotionally, you stop celebrating others fully, not because you don't want to, but because each celebration feels like a reminder of your own unfulfilled hopes. You stop congratulating yourself for your progress, not because you haven't progressed, but because the cycle keeps moving the finish line. Every achievement becomes smaller the moment someone surpasses it. Every joy becomes fragile the moment someone experiences a greater one. Every step forward becomes meaningless the moment someone races ahead. This is the cruelty of the cycle. It does not let you enjoy what is yours because it convinces you that it is not enough. And so, even when you win, you feel like you are losing. Even when you rise, you feel lower than before. Because comparison is not a measurement of worth. It is a measurement of wounds. The world becomes a hall of mirrors. Everywhere you look, you see a reflection, but never your own. You see who you think you should be, who you fear you are not, who you once hoped to become, who you worry you can never reach. A hall of mirrors built not from glass, but from the expectations of others. You thought you were studying them, but you were studying your insecurities through them. The real reflection, the one that belongs to you, grows distant, blurred, barely recognizable. You lose the ability to see yourself clearly, not because you lack vision, but because you have spent too long looking outward. And slowly, comparison becomes identity. You no longer ask, "Is my life meaningful?" You ask, "Is my life meaningful compared to theirs?" You no longer ask, "Am I growing?" You ask, "Am I growing as quickly as they are?" You no longer ask, "Am I enough?" You ask, "Am I enough when placed beside them?" This shift is subtle, invisible, but devastating. Because the moment your worth becomes conditional, it becomes fragile, breakable, negotiable, dependent on factors you cannot control. and the cycle feeds on what you cannot control. This is the point where the cycle corrupts your relationship with ambition. You stop wanting things for your soul. You start wanting them to end the ache. You no longer pursue dreams. You pursue relief. You chase success not because it calls to you, but because it temporarily silences the whisper that you are behind. You run harder, faster, longer, but you are not moving forward. You are running from yourself. You thought you were living. You were only running. Running toward a version of yourself that does not exist. Running away from the version that does. Running in circles inside a maze drawn by fear. And the most tragic part is this. The cycle convinces you that everyone else is ahead. But the truth is, everyone else is just afraid. They compare to, they shrink to, they question themselves to, they scroll, ache, collapse, and rebuild themselves 1,000 times in silence. No one escapes the cycle untouched. Some just hide their wounds better. But knowing this doesn't free you. Not yet. Because the cycle isn't broken by knowledge. It is broken by awareness. And awareness is born only when the illusion shatters. Eventually, the cycle collapses under its own weight. Not dramatically, not suddenly, but slowly. A quiet decay. You begin to feel that no matter how much you achieve, something remains unfulfilled. Something remains hungry. Something remains reaching outward while neglecting the inward world. You begin to sense that every comparison steals a fraction of your presence. A moment of your life, a breath that belonged to you. You begin to see that you have been living beside yourself rather than within yourself. This realization doesn't free you, but it weakens the cycle's hold. It cracks the illusion, and through that crack, a deeper truth enters. You cannot heal envy by becoming better than others. You heal envy by becoming whole within yourself. But this truth frightens you, because it means the solution is internal, not external. It means the mirror you must confront is not the mirror of comparison, but the mirror of awareness. The mirror that does not show you who you are failing to be, but who you already are beneath the layers of fear. This is the threshold of the descent, the moment where seeking outward becomes impossible and turning inward becomes unavoidable. You feel it, a quiet pressure in your chest, a soft trembling of truth, a pull towards something deeper than thought. You have reached the end of the cycle, and without knowing it, you are standing at the doorway of yourself, not the self shaped by longing, not the self shaped by insecurity, not the self shaped by the weight of other people's lives, but the self that exists beneath comparison, present, untouched, silent. This is where the journey shifts, where running becomes stopping, where searching becomes listening, where measurement becomes meaninglessness, where the mirror is no longer an enemy, but a gate into the part of you untouched by envy, because it is untouched by illusion. You are ready for the descent, not downward, but inward, into the quiet, into the stillness that comparison cannot reach, into the truth that begins where the cycle ends. There is a moment when the mind grows tired of its own noise, tired of the chasing, tired of the measuring, tired of the constant turning of the wheel that never leads anywhere new. You feel that moment now. It arrives not as exhaustion, but as a soft loosening inside you, a quiet surrender you didn't plan, a pause you didn't ask for, yet somehow needed. The cycle of comparison has run its course. It has repeated itself so many times that the rhythm has become hollow, and now something in you begins to fall silent. Not defeated, not broken, just still, as if your inner world has finally exhaled after years of holding its breath. This is the descent, not a fall, but a return, not into darkness, but into the place beneath the darkness, the place where awareness waits. You notice the silence first, not the silence around you, but the silence within you, a silence that has always been there, but buried beneath layers of expectation, fear, narrative, and noise. This silence is not empty. It is dense, alive, almost luminous. You step into it the way you might step into cold water, slowly, carefully, with a mix of hesitation and longing. The mind resists at first. It always does. It reaches for something to compare, something to measure, something to climb toward or run from. But the silence offers nothing to grab onto. And so, slowly, the mind loses momentum. You begin to notice the space between your thoughts, the gentle gap, the soft opening, a doorway without a door. For years, you have believed that awareness comes from effort. But here, in this descent, you realize something different. Awareness comes when effort dissolves. The deeper you move inward, the fewer words you need, the fewer explanations, the fewer identities. Comparison cannot survive here. It has no oxygen in this stillness. Because comparison lives only in the horizontal plane of life, where you look left, look right, look outward. But awareness lives in the vertical plane, where you look inward, upward, downward, into the infinite depth of your own presence. Here, there is no above or below, no ahead or behind, no better or worse. Only this moment unfolding quietly within you. As you descend, you begin to see the truth hidden beneath your envy. It was never about others, never about their success, their joy, their beauty, their confidence. It was always about your distance from yourself. When you drift away from your inner being, your outer world becomes a threat. Every success becomes a mirror of your absence. Every joy becomes a reminder of your quiet ache. Every confident person becomes a reflection of your disconnection. But as you return inward, the threat dissolves. The ache loosens. The mirror softens. The comparisons lose meaning. Not because you forced them to disappear, but because the one who needed them is no longer in control. Something deeper has taken its place. Something older than fear, older than longing, older than identity. A presence. Quiet remembering. As if you are meeting yourself again for the first time in years. You realize now that envy was never a flaw. It was a signal, a compass, pointing to the parts of you that had gone unheard. A whisper from the inner world saying, "You have abandoned me. Come back." And now you are coming back, step by step, breath by breath, silence by silence. The descent is not dramatic. It does not shout. It does not shake the earth. It simply removes everything that is not yours. Every borrowed expectation, every imagined failure, every identity built on comparison, every fear shaped by someone else's life. They fall away like dust sliding off an old mirror. And beneath that dust, you begin to see something you had forgotten. Your reflection before the world touched it. A reflection untouched by envy, because it has nothing to protect. Untouched by insecurity, because it has nothing to compare. Untouched by fear, because it has nothing to lose. This reflection is quiet, almost shy, as if waiting to see whether you will recognize it. You move closer, slowly, gently. You look into the eyes of this inner self, and something inside you softens. This is not the person you thought you needed to become. This is the person you already were, before comparison fractured your awareness. A self that simply exists, without measurement, without striving, without the constant hunger to validate its own presence. You may feel a sadness rising here, a grief for the years spent looking outward instead of looking inward, a grief for the moments lost, a grief for the self you abandoned, in pursuit of a self you could never reach. Let the grief come. It is part of the descent. It is part of the healing. It is the heart remembering itself. And beneath the grief, you feel something else. Something softer, quieter, more profound. A calm acceptance. A warmth that does not need a source. A presence that does not need validation. It is the beginning of inner stillness. Not peace. Not yet. But the doorway to peace. Stillness is not the absence of thought. It is the absence of comparison. The absence of the internal race. The absence of the mind's constant attempt to outrun its own reflection. Stillness is what remains when the chasing stops. And here, in this descent, you feel it beginning. A sense that you are enough. Not because you have achieved something, but because you have finally stopped running away from who you are. You are not behind. You are not failing. You are not less than anyone else. You are simply here, breathing, present, aware. The descent brings you to a place where you finally understand. Your worth was never lost. It was only buried beneath comparison. And as you continue inward, deeper than thought, deeper than emotion, deeper than fear, you reach a quiet truth. You were never missing anything. You were only missing yourself. This is the heart of the descent, the rediscovery of the presence that has always lived beneath the noise. And now that you have reached it, the path ahead begins to open like a soft dawn, a movement not outward, but upward, not into striving, but into liberation. The silence around you expands, the stillness deepens. And somewhere inside you, a truth rises with the gentleness of a slow breaking tide. You are enough for this moment, for this life, for yourself. And this quiet recognition is the beginning of freedom. You are ready for what comes next, not as someone searching for worth, but as someone returning to it. The descent has led you here, to the quiet threshold of liberation. Liberation does not arrive with fanfare. It does not burst through the door. It does not sweep you into euphoria or lift you into some dazzling revelation. It comes quietly, softly, like a whisper, finding its way back into your awareness after years of being silenced. You notice it first in the absence of urgency, the absence of comparison, the absence of that familiar ache that once curled around your thoughts like fog. There is space now, a space you did not force, a space you did not chase, a space that emerged naturally when the noise dissolved. It feels unfamiliar, almost unnerving, because for so long your identity was shaped by motion, moving towards something, running from something, measuring yourself against something. Stillness feels foreign, but it is also luminous, alive, expansive. This stillness is not passive. It is not resignation. It is not emptiness. It is the space where awareness can finally breathe. You sit in it quietly, and something extraordinary begins to happen. Not dramatic, not explosive, just true. You begin to see life as it is, not as a contest you must win, or a performance you must perfect. You begin to see others as they are, not as threats, or standards, or mirrors reflecting your inadequacy. You begin to see yourself, without the weight of comparison distorting your reflection. And for the first time, you feel a gentle warmth spreading within you, a warmth that asks for nothing and promises nothing, and yet offers everything. Acceptance, not as a philosophy, but as a lived experience. The acceptance of your pace, the acceptance of your path, the acceptance of the quiet unfolding that is your life. Not the life you imagined in moments of longing, not the life you compare to others, but the life that is here, breathing with you, growing with you, whispering to you. This life does not need you to be anyone else. This moment does not need you to prove anything. This breath does not ask for permission to exist. It simply is. And in that realization, you discover something profound. The peace you sought through achieving, through impressing, through outperforming, through being seen, was never out there. It was always waiting beneath the noise. Comparison had buried it. Envy had obscured it. The chase had drowned it out. But peace was never gone, only hidden. And as you rest in this emerging stillness, you realize that the distance between you and peace was always the distance between you and yourself. Now that you have returned inward, peace returns to you. Not as a victory, not as a reward, but as a natural state of being. You begin to understand that freedom is not the absence of others' success. It is the absence of your need to measure your worth against it. Freedom is the softening of the mind, the releasing of the grip around your identity, the loosening of the narratives that once defined you. Freedom is standing in your life without asking it to be someone else's. Freedom is seeing someone else shine and feeling no contraction inside you, only warmth, because their light no longer dims your own. You realize now that there is room for all of it. Their joy, your joy. Their path, your path. There is no scarcity in authenticity, only in comparison. As you breathe into this truth, your awareness expands further. It stretches into places you once avoided. It touches parts of you that had remained tightly guarded. It softens the tension you carried silently for years. And you see something clearly for the first time. You were never behind. You were never failing. You were never less. You were unfolding, slowly, quietly, in your own rhythm, in your own pace, in your own sacred way. No one else can live your life. No one else can measure it. No one else can define it. Their reflection has nothing to do with your becoming. Your reflection has nothing to do with their path. The world is vast enough for all of us to bloom without taking anything from one another. You feel a breath rise inside you, not forced, not intentional, just natural. Your shoulders soften. Your mind loosens. Your heart opens just a little more. There is no battle left to fight here. No illusion left to protect. No enemy left in the mirror. Because the enemy was never the reflection. It was the fear behind the reflection. The story behind the story. The voice behind the voice. Now that you see through it, the mirror becomes simple again. Just a surface. Just a moment. Just an invitation to recognize your own presence. Liberation is not the end of desire. Not the end of ambition. Not the end of longing. Liberation is the end of distortion. You no longer chase because you fear you are behind. You move because something in you wants to unfold. You no longer compare to find your place in the world. You belong simply because you exist. You no longer shrink when you see someone else rise. Their light illuminates the sky, but your light illuminates your path. And both are necessary. Both are beautiful. Both are allowed. You sit in this awareness. Quiet, breathing, present. A presence that asks for nothing, yet gives everything. And beneath the calm, a truth forms. Soft, paradoxical, liberating. When you stop seeking peace, it finds you. And another. You were never chasing success. You were escaping silence. Now you are no longer escaping. You are here, fully, gently, completely. And that is enough. That has always been enough. Your liberation is not a moment. It is a remembering, a soft awakening back into the truth of your own being. You are no longer at war with the mirror. You can finally see through it. And as the last layer of comparison dissolves, you realize there is nothing left between you and yourself. Just awareness, just breath, just life unfolding quietly within you. And this simple, silent, unmeasured presence is freedom.